Daniel Driving and Dragons here with part 2 of the I Paid Strangers to Write D&D Backstories on Fiverr video that Ginny D put out there. And I took a minute here. I took a little break from the recording of part 1, got myself a little Gatorade, did a little X conversating, just decompressed for a second. And I took about 5 minutes to scribble down a quick backstory of my own for Miss Vega Lyre to see how Vega Lyre comes out. This is 1, 2, 3, technically 4 paragraphs. It's really 3 paragraphs with a 2-sentence buffer at the bottom. Takes up about maybe half a page, and we'll save that for later. And you guys can tell me how my backstory for her character compares to all these Fiverr people. Maybe I ought to hang up the YouTube gig and start writing backstories for lazy 5e players on Fiverr. Anyway, you guys know the drill. While you're here, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Consider the memberships both at Patreon and here on YouTube. Consider the super chat button. All that money goes towards building cards that I can give away. The Z is mine. That's my project that I'm working on right now with my own money. But the money for the channel is supposed to go for something I can give away. And I would so much rather be putting something together that somebody can be very proud to have in their driveway, and I can be proud to put it there. And I'd love for all of you guys to be proud to be part of putting it there, even if you're not the one who wins it. So please consider throwing a couple bucks my way for these this good old-fashioned hour. This is going to be probably a 2-hour reaction by the time we're done with it. Part 1 was right at an hour, and this one's probably going to be pretty close. After editing down, it's probably going to be closer to like 50 minutes a piece. Anyway, so just a quick recap. In part 1, she hired 3 writers from Fiverr. One is pretty obviously a scammer. I mean, Jesus, the dude is from Nigeria. I mean, he may as well have just put I am scammer as his name. He's clearly using ChatGPT poorly, or Grok or something, to kind of assist him. 2 other writers are in there. My serious concern is that at least one of them is talking about 3- and 4-page backstories, which I think is entirely too long. Ginny, of course, did her version of the backstory, and she also did a little bit of other work of herself in the first video, and it wasn't terrible. Like I said, it's something I wouldn't have thrown out the door or anything. The only thing that I would have scoffed at is the fact that she used the term Thieves Guild, which I think is just one of the dumbest concepts on the planet. And that, of course, her backstory reflected a D&D world that's essentially the modern world with a slap coat palette swap to quote-unquote medieval times on it, which is something I don't like. I like to have much more realistic worlds. It's like they need to kind of function at least somewhat like that kind of era would focus or would function, as opposed to a modern era. But anyway, we're going to get cracking back in on this and get it all finished up. It's about halfway through, and we're about to start seeing what the old Fiverr people have for backstories. We'll talk about them. We'll recap Ginny's if she doesn't, and I will jump in and I'll go ahead and spit out my own little short backstory, and you guys can tell me in the comments who did a better job. But anyway, so let's get cracking here. Let's go to part 2 of I Paid Strangers to Write D&D Backstories.
All right, first up, Speed McCoy. I will say Speed McCoy got back to me really fast. I think that the timeline was like 2 days delivery, and he delivered it to me like day 1. Vega Lyre, 5th level rogue wizard. A conclave's creation that learned to escape with magic and shadows. Ooh. Decades ago, a secretive circle of powerful spellcasters known as the Astral Conclave began pursuing a controversial theory that celestial power did not truly and exclusively belong to the gods, but instead was another form of magical energy flowing through the planes. If arcane scholars could understand its structure, they believed it could be studied, shaped, and eventually controlled. Is this going to be like, we can play God, and create a celestial. Is that the vibe? At the center of this work stood Velistra Dawnweaver, an ancient high elf archmage whose research focused on the interaction between divine light and arcane magic. After years of study, she proposed a bold experiment that would test whether celestial essence could be anchored within a mortal life. So the concept here is like mages tried to put celestial magic into a mortal, and that's how she was created, a celestial like experiment. This is already more interesting than what I came up with. From the beginning, Vega was raised within the Conclave's hidden tower, the Celestarium. I like all these fancy star-themed words too, the Astral Conclave, the Celestarium. Okay, and then they like raise and study her to see how her celestial energy manifests. So she got a great education, that explains why she's a wizard. And then Vega realizes that she's basically being raised in a cage. She is an experiment being studied, and she has no freedom. She escapes! She escapes! By the time the Astral Conclave realized what had happened, Vega Lyre was gone. The world outside the tower was vast and unfamiliar. This is such a, like, iconic D&D character trope, is like, I don't know about the real world, and it is fun to roleplay. Meanwhile, the Astral Conclave is searching for her. Vega's independence only proves the strength of the power within her, and Velistra believes that she will someday return. The Astral Conclave will finally learn what their stolen star is truly capable of becoming. I love the phrase, stolen star. Cool!
Okay, so my thoughts first and then her thoughts. First off, this is about twice as much backstory as they really need. It's a little overwrought. Now I can get that because once again, this is a person who is writing to sell a product. You want them to feel like they're getting their money's worth. Like, you know, you don't want to just hand over 10 sentences and they're like, well, I paid $5 for 10 sentences. Like I'm literally paying 50 cents a sentence here. So I can kind of get that. Also, like I said before, that gives the DM the ability to edit, and it gives the player the ability to edit. Well, that doesn't really fit the world, but I don't throw out everything I paid for, and I'm still functionally this character. Some things I don't like about this is you've got named NPCs in here that are not named NPCs that are like her, you know, her kindly master who's like a level 5 wizard over here in the hut, but like powerful wizards of a conclave that are trying to, you know, that are dealing with the powers of the cosmos and forming this creature and this creation. It really shoehorns this into a very high magic world. It shoehorns it into the kind of world where a powerful astral conclave wizard thing, like, you know, basically having like the Red Wizards of Thay can just be another faction. Like it would have to be like a Faerun type place where it's such a vast and overly magicked world that this astral conclave could literally just be kind of like a backwoods wizard's tower and still have this kind of power. It really would hamstring the DM if he's in anything like a moderate magic type world, or even like Greyhawk. Like this wouldn't really fit in Greyhawk. So it's kind of rough. Now, if this were the first character being brought to me as a DM, and some player of mine was like, hey, I think this is a really cool story, I'd like to run with this, there's stuff in here I can run with, and I can build a campaign around this and feed the other characters into it. It is loose enough that I can probably center things around this astral conclave and they're screwing around with the natural order and trying to play God and stuff. And there is a little bit of uniqueness to it. I do like the fact that the Aasimar is not just, oh, great granddaddy was an angel. It's literally, hey, we stole celestial essence and put it in there. You could even have this Aasimar be somebody who is being like hunted down by a celestial, like an actual celestial order of astral devas or something like that, because they're literally made with stolen holiness, but, you know, kind of like stolen valor on a much higher level. You just have, you know, literally, you know, what Aasimar and Tiefling are supposed to be, their planes touched. It's literally touched, but it's kind of like the planes bad touched. Like you got Uncle Touchy from the celestial world. But there is a little bit too much here. There's a little bit too much detail in here that is going to finick with the DM. If we go with her criteria, originality, I'm going to give this probably a 4 out of 5, given the the unique way they went with it. I'm not saying it's never been done before, but I do think that's kind of a 4 out of 5 type area. If I'm going to go with the playability, this is a very easily playable character. That's a 5 out of 5 for me, because you're looking at a super playable character, and it's very open on the player character side. But I'm going to probably put this like a 2.5 or a 2 out of 5 on the DM section of her little criteria. I do think that this gets it's when you have a backstory that's this long and this detailed, basically your DM's going to either have to dig into it at the exclusion of other players. You're not the only one at the damn table, or they're going to have to ignore large parts of it or edit large parts of it. So for DM appeal, this one to me is like I think I'm actually probably going to knock that down. It's 2 out of 5, maybe 1.5 out of 5. I think the DM appeal is not there with this one, other than it being something that they could probably build something off of more than the player.
I do really like this backstory. Attached NPCs. Valeester Dawnweaver, of course, her sort of like mother / the leader of the experiment, the Archmage. Garrick Three Keys, a seasoned burglar. Recognizing her intelligence and her magical talent, he took an interest in her and taught her rogue skills. Okay, and then there's roleplay tips. She grew up surrounded by scholars in arcane theory, which left her with a strong instinct for study. So she likes to understand things before taking action. She tends to ask questions and think through possibilities when encountering new phenomena. However, her escape from the Astral Conclave also taught her to be careful. If something feels like a trap or manipulation, her instinct is to slow down and gather information. She spent her early life in a place where others decided her future for her, so she places enormous value on personal freedom and choice. Yep. Totally makes sense. Even if she keeps her emotions hidden, situations that resemble her past may push her to intervene more quickly than she normally would. Oh, and he created her a homebrew spell. I just want to remind you guys that this guy did all this for $5. Like, what the dude? Raise your prices.
No. I mean, yeah, maybe he should raise his prices based on the amount of work that's put in here. But I honestly don't think he should, because a lot of this is going to get thrown out by most GMs. You're not bringing your own homebrew spell to my table, because you're messing with the game rules, the actual mechanics. And even the no prep, everything's emergent storytelling super OSR crowd is still going to say, game rules and rulings. That is 100,000% the DMs. You're stomping all over his toes, maybe as a request. The attached to NPCs, this is actually something that would not necessarily be a bad thing if you're doing a backstory and handing it over to your DM. It's like, hey, these are the important people in my life. I would know them. It does make sense for them to exist. And now you have a little bit more about what my perception of them was. So you can do some version and some stuff like that. It can give you a little help there. And given that I'm creating a character for somebody else, the role play tips are definitely something that I would put in. So as far as like analyzing this dude as a Fiverr writer, I think this is actually all pretty useful stuff. Because like if I went to him and said, hey, give me 5 characters for me to, because I'm going to do a one shot and I'm just going to do pre-generated characters, and I want 5 of them. I can give this guy $25. He can put these out here. I can hand them out over to my players, and this would be useful, especially after I went through and gleaned through, found all the threads that weave together, all the stuff that works together, and was able to create a campaign off of it. This is way too much for a character backstory as a general rule, though.
Did a great job. I wanted to homebrew a spell that thematically ties the arcane and rogue sides of Vega together. That's cool. Please ensure that your DM is happy with this spell being included in her spellbook. I love that. That he wrote a spell, but he also was like, make sure your DM accepts this. It's homebrew. Rogue's Hush, first level illusion. You weave a subtle spell of arcane silence around your movements. Cool, it's like a magic stealth. If you attempt to pick a lock, disarm a trap, or manipulate small objects, the sounds of your actions are magically muffled. I mean, that's great. It's basically just like a little first level stealth boost for a spellcaster, which is great. All right, so first of all, great job, Speed McCoy. You went way above and beyond what $5 should have bought me. We are going to rate him now on our 3 criteria. First, we have originality. I think the idea of making her like a magic experiment is really fun. It like is an exciting thing to roleplay, and it's an interesting and unique backstory that is unlike the things that I've personally seen at D&D tables. So originality, I'm gonna say we're gonna rate these out of 5, right? I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5 originality, 5 out of 5 stars.
Okay, so I think on the next one, whenever we get to the next character, I'm going to try and wait for her ratings, and I'm just going to give mine when she gives hers, because that's kind of what I did, and that might make this a little bit shorter and at least a little bit easier for you guys to go back and check and figure it out. I'm pretty sure I gave them a 4 out of 5.
Because it's a star rating, but stars. We're rating in stars because celestial. 5 stars. All right, playability. We've got our 2 factors, motivation and complication. I think the motivation absolutely checked off. Her motivation is that she had to escape to be free, and now she wants to stay free. In fact, I think her motivation and her complication are really similar to the ones that I created for her in my backstory, which is she can't stay in one place too long. She has to be cautious about who learns her name and how she connects with figures of authority. So I think that all of that works really, really well. 5 out of 5 stars for playability. I hate to just...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure what did I give? A 3.5 out of 5, I believe, on playability. I think there's a little bit more there. I have to go back and look again.
Keep being like, this guy did such a better job than me, but like the role play tips I think are a very helpful part of this. He's not just implying her motivation and complication. He's specifically saying, here's how you can take that motivation and use it to affect the choices that she's making at the table.
Okay, and I guess I got to give that too. I rated his playability and stuff before the role-playing tips and stuff was there, just based off of the backstory by itself. Maybe I'd have given him a little bit more with that being added in.
He's not implying that connection. He is literally just drawing out that connection for me. Finally, we're looking at DM appeal and loose threads. I think the most obvious loose thread here is the Astral Conclave. We know that they're trying to learn to work with divine magic. I think that as a DM, my gut impulse would be to try and tie that to other things going on in the story. What other things did the Astral Conclave have their fingers in that maybe Vega didn't know about? And then, of course, we have these NPCs. They are quite defined in here. He has gone out of his way to provide like 3 pretty well fleshed out NPCs that I could use as a DM. But at the same time, I think it would be easy enough to like merge one of these NPCs with an existing one in the plot line if the DM wanted to do that. If I had like an important mage and I wanted to make that mage Velistra Dawnweaver, I think that would be quite easy to do. So yeah, I'm also going to say 5 out of 5 stars for DM appeal.
Yeah, I definitely didn't give him 5 out of 5 on DM appeal. What did I say, 2.5 or 2, and then maybe even 1.5. I definitely disagree with her here. There are some things that she said that I actually believe are correct. Some of the ways that she could handle it as a DM to tone it down, merge it with an already existing NPC, maybe merge it with somebody from one of the other characters' backstories. But you are having to do a lot of work to work this into your campaign. And then what if there's a massive racial divide with the elves? Why are these characters associated with each other? Why is this NPC here? I mean, yeah, you could say, well, you could just change the race and make it work. But there's a lot of stuff that would have to be polished and sanded to make this work. And I think that I'm pretty happy with where I was at.
I think Speed McCoy overall did a fantastic job. Every single part of this is well thought out, it's creative, and it seems fun. Like, I read this and I'm like, that sounds like a fun character to play. I would like to play that character. Good job, Speed McCoy. Exceptional. Professionalism. Exceeded expectations. Attention to details. Quick responsiveness. Delivery time. Went above and beyond. Deep understanding. Speed McCoy's love and understanding of D&D is so clear. I think this is a slam dunk, I'm going to say. Critical hit. Yay! Now I get to tip. Okay, let me tell you what. I hope they let me do this. I can't tip him $60? That's how much I paid the scammer. Hate that. Okay, well, I'm going to pay him $25. All right, Kirsten.
I don't disagree with her there. And old Speed McCoy there, I think definitely earned his $5. He probably earned the $30 that she gave him. And I mean, I can't really complain. And I think she's actually right. I'm looking at that character. I would probably be I wouldn't be excited and I wouldn't be all giddy about it or anything. But, you know, that is a character that I think could easily plug into several adventures, could be a centerpiece, either as an NPC or could be played. I wouldn't have any problems handing that to one of my players as a template character for a one shot or something either.
Kirsten says, hi, thank you so much for ordering from me. This was a joy to write. I've attached a PDF of what I've written, and there's a note on the last page about some choices I made. I don't think I made it too tragic. Also, not to be a fangirl, but are you Ginny D from YouTube? Oh, that is very, very sweet. Oh, she said she just recently started DMing. That's really nice. Josh asked if I used like a pseudonym on Fiverr, which I probably should have done because the main reason I didn't want anybody to know who I was on these orders is because I didn't want anybody to think this might be in a YouTube video and do something different than what they would do for a normal order. That's very
And yet she decided to tell everybody she was Ginny D anyway.
Sweet though. Thank you for watching, Kirsten. I hope that you are not freaked out seeing yourself in this video. All right, so this is like a little narrative story. It's like a section of a novel. The stars stopped singing that night, or at least that's how it felt as Vega ran. Her boots were caked in mud and the dagger weighed heavily on her belt. Blood dripped off the blades, staining her clothes. She hadn't had a moment to clean them. Who did you kill, Vega? She heard shouting and the sound of swords being drawn. Who's chasing her? The stars stayed silent overhead as a thought drifted through her mind. The guards will wake the children. Nothing is singing them to sleep. The blindfold over her eyes shifted as her eyebrows knit. She pulled her hood lower and then turned and slipped into the shadows. This was the last time she stole from the archives, and the first time she stopped hearing the stars. It was also the first time she killed someone. It wouldn't be the last. Wow, very dramatic. Vega Lyre had always been able to hear the stars. It was music to her, an ever-present lullaby of strings. Even if it wasn't audible, she could sense it like vibrations through water. It kept her company in the long, cold nights at the orphanage. An orphan? No, Vega! In both of the backstories so far, she has no parents. In mine, she had parents. Who knows? Maybe she had parents at the Astral Conclave. Maybe there were just people who banged out a little celestial child in the ritual circle. She was one of the oldest there. Oh no, nobody adopted her. Vega was different. She remembered the day she was dropped off. A calloused hand pulled her up the stairs. The man smelled like pine needles. He handed her a blindfold and told her to wrap it around her eyes. Keep that over your eyes, he said. They won't find you here. Who? Who won't find her? Okay, she took care of the younger children. She would not sing to them, though. She couldn't sing very well. She told them to listen, that the stars would sing them to sleep if they'd listened hard enough. She never takes off her blindfold. Okay, so she can see through the blindfold, but people can't see her eyes through it. And this is important because her eyes glow with silver light that drips down her face like tears of mercury. Cool. That's very visually cool. That'd be a fun like makeup look to do too. Someone came to the orphanage asking for a child with strange markings, and he had glyphs around his wrist, but he didn't have the right voice. It wasn't the man who dropped her off. It was a different guy. So she follows him. She goes into the archive. She steals a little, just for funsies. She returned to the archive many times after that, stealing small components and selling them or trading them to buy nicer things for the other orphans. What a sweetheart. And then one night, the stars stopped singing. She's there to steal something, and she hears the voice of the man who dropped her off at the orphanage. She kills a man to escape. Okay, so the guy who dropped her off, maybe her dad, he gives her a book, and he whispers, learn. And then the elf who originally came, he threatens to destroy the orphanage if she doesn't go with him. Whoever these people with the glyphs around their wrist track her back to the orphanage, and she has to flee in order to get away from them. All she has is this book that guy gave her, and it's a mystery what it is and who he is and what's going on. Okay, and here are the author's notes.
I think I might have to stop here just a little bit. It's actually a good time to stop for it, but getting on to the fair use stuff, just letting old Jenny play here. But there's good and bad here. All right. I'm thinking that maybe this author's note here at the bottom might tell us something. I'm going to let her read it here in a minute. I'm not going to bother to stare at the screen to figure it out myself. There's actually a very OSR, very actually even a very bro SR element to this backstory. And that is that while it is not written that way, what is the nature? Why are we supposed to read Appendix N? We're supposed to read Appendix N, if you listen to the bro SR Nimrods, we have to read the Independence in because that's how you figure out how characters function. You're supposed to be emulating those characters. Well, it's not like you open up, The Coming of Conan of Samaria and read through several of Howard's classic works, Tower of the Elephant, Red Nails, etc. Frost Giant's daughter. And it's not like it sits there and says, well, Conan was born at this time and he had these parents and he did this and he went here and he is he's a barbarian and all this stuff. It gives you this kind of narrative and you read it and you get to see how the character interacts and things, and you get to naturally and instinctively absorb the character. So I think there is actually some serious benefit to that. Rather than telling you this is how you should play this character, it is showing you how the character would behave and letting your brain naturally develop the neural pathways to think the way the character does and to see things from the character's eyes, which is kind of ironic given that she does the blindfold thing with the whole Mercury eyes. I think the Mercury eyes is actually not a bad thing given that this is an Aasimar and they're supposed to have, similar traits from, Celestia and whatnot. And there could be some angel or something out there with platinum eyes that turns out to be somehow tied to them. But that being said, I am missing, at least thus far, a lot of game information that I would need for a backstory. And it is, again, the way it's written, the way it's done, I'm not going to sit here and say it's too long because it's basically narrative instruction to the player. But if the player should not hand this to a game master. This is more the kind of thing that the player reads to figure out what their character is, and then there's kind of a summary that's handed over to the game master to be an actual character backstory. This is literally a backstory, and that's a little bit I think it's a little bit outside the scope. I don't think it's quite what we need unless there's more below for game rule information.
Notes. Hi, such a fun combination of elements. Between Aasimar, Rogue, and Wizard, there's so much room for complexity. I agree. I think it's very interesting. I looked up what her name meant, which is why I leaned so heavily into the Starlight direction. Love it. Tried to write a little wiggle room for how long she's been wizarding. I know this is a little bit of a plot pusher, so I'm happy to make any revisions you like. Okay. I think this is fun too. Let's talk through our ratings. Originality. I'm gonna mark her down 1 star for the orphanage thing, just because it is such a like tragic backstory cliche. I don't think it's bad. I have played orphans before, and I'm sure I'll play orphans again. So 4 out of 5 stars for originality.
My originality is going to be probably more of a 3. And I think I'm stretching for a 3. There's a lot of and I'm doing this based on what I'm looking at here. I'm not going to give her any leeway for modern writing and the complete lack of anything that even looks like a unique or individualist character in modern writing. They're all just copy pasted, morally gray. Not even just morally gray. They're copy pasted gray characters. Sometimes they're not even good archetypes, but I'm not going to judge it against that. I'm going to judge it against what a good character actually is and what we've got here. On originality, I can't really give her too much. It's an orphan. It's the escape. It's the mysterious figure from the past that saved her. It's this, the obvious tie to the stars and even the Mercury bleeding eyes thing with the almost meaningless blindfold is even that it's very, very on the nose. I think it's a little obvious. There's nothing wrong with that, and I honestly think that if you look at it, it's like a 2.5 or a 3. That's dead center average, which frankly is better than a lot of what you see, especially out of role players or out of TTRPG players, and especially if you start looking at more into the gamist side of things, because you get these people who are like, my backstory is next to nothing because I have almost no creativity, but I'm really good at math rocks, so making ultra powerful characters through super crunch is definitely my thing. I'm really good at rolling characters for World of Warcraft or for EverQuest or for Dark Age of Camelot or whatever. I'm not so great at creating characters for stories. So, comparing it to that lens, obviously, like I said, right down the middle.
Playability. Similar to both my backstory and Speed McCoy's backstory, the motivation is escape, right? She's being hunted, which is a good, clear motivation. There's more complication in here than in the other two stories, because not only is she being hunted, but she has these extremely identifiable eyes. Even concealing the eyes still makes her stand out, right? Like seeing somebody who is wearing a blindfold, you're going to remember that. So that is definitely a complication. I also think we've been given a fair amount of personality here too, right? Because she is somebody who is willing to do risky things to protect the innocent. She's out here stealing to benefit the orphans. And even when she herself was an orphan, she was like protective of the younger orphans. So I think we have a very like nurturing, almost like motherly figure in her that would be just like clear guidance for roleplay. So I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 for playability.
Okay. Wanted to let her get her story out there. 5 out of 5 for playability. I don't think so. I think that the playability has got serious issues here. I think you're down more like a 2 or maybe even a 1.5 out of playability. She's location bound because she's tied to this orphanage. And unless we modernize this where she can Zelle or Cash App this money and these resources back to the orphanage, she has to be close enough to constantly deliver this stuff to the orphanage, which is going to location bind her in the world, which means that her character is going to constantly be an issue when it comes to, we need to move forward. We need to go forward. We need to get away from things. She is a rogue who is incredibly noticeable. So, I mean, the last thing you want when you are a criminal who is stealing from people is to be you have a blindfold around you, around your eyes, or weeping mercury eyes and just stand out like a sore thumb. There's a lot of playability issues here. This character has motivation and has some depth to it, but it is very, very locked into that story. And a lot of the key driving factors, positive or negative, for this character are the kind of thing that are going to lead to them not going to adventure, not going on and taking, they'll take risks for that particular thing. They're not going to take the risks to go save the world and whatever, or to do the things that are going to stand out. So I think from a D&D campaign standpoint, the playability suffers badly for this character.
And then we've got DM appeal. So as far as loose threads go, this is like made of loose threads. There is no resolution here. All we have are mysteries, right? We have the mystery of, why are her eyes like that? Who is she? Where is she from? We have the mystery of, what is this group with the glyphs around their wrists? And why do they have different goals with regards to her? Because obviously the man who took her to the orphanage thought that she needed to be separated from that group. But the elf who comes to the orphanage looking for her over a decade later, he is the one who like wants to bring her back. And I don't know, maybe harm her in some way. And then there's the mystery of like why she can hear the stars singing and what it means when the stars are or are not singing. So that's another like fun thing to play with. And then fourth, there's the mystery of what the book is. What is the book and what's in the book and what can she learn from the book? This is so open that I think that a DM could do almost anything with this. In fact, my only concern as a DM would be that it is a lot. It is a lot to resolve. I think it depends on sort of what I had in mind and what I already had lined up for this story. I might, as a DM, feel like this is so many mysteries to resolve that it's putting a lot of pressure on me. But if I came up with a brilliant idea, then maybe that would be totally fine. And maybe that would be awesome. Or if it like lined up really well with a plot that I had in mind. And the author does say that. She says this is a bit of a plot pusher. So I think she's like aware of the fact that this could be quite a big arc to create. And she was ready to make revisions. I think I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 for DM appeal. Just knocking off that 1 star because I do worry that it's a little big in terms of the space that it's leaving for the DM to fill. In my
Okay. I'm actually going to give this a 5 out of 5. For DM appeal. There's a reason I'm going to give it the 5 out of 5. And this is a major problem with Ginny D's entire gaming philosophy. and with the modern gaming philosophy that she represents. And that is that as a game master, she owns a pen and she owns a pencil and she owns dice and she owns paper, but she doesn't own an X-Acto knife to cut shit out of the player's backstory. Yeah, there's plenty of loose stuff there. Cut some of it out. Don't use some of it. Ignore it. You don't need to use it all. And the author here left plenty wide open for the game master to use, and left it plenty vague enough to where it can be adapted, molded, and changed. There's so much that the backstory that the character does not know that the DM can just write it whole cloth and fit it in however they need to, and even use it as the thing that might solve some of the playability problems and push them forward. Now, I can kind of see some of it where it's like there's a lot there. That's okay. You got to carve it up. The only place that I would actually dock this for DM appeal is the way it's written. The way it's written is like the kind of thing I would hand a player as a game master, not the kind of thing that I would want a player to hand me as a game master. So I guess if I wanted to knock off a half star or something, or maybe even agree with Jenny and say it's a 4 out of 5, it would be for that reason. It certainly wouldn't be for the reason that they spoiled me for choice. And if I have 10 things, chances are there's going to be at least a few of them that I can pick out that are going to work with other things, and do so in a way that it doesn't have to be so big. Like, let's compare it to that first backstory. You don't have like this great celestial power order or whatever that's, using the great power of the cosmos to force feed celestial power into a baby or something in order to create this Aasimar. You have something that could easily be extremely powerful, but could also easily be a nothing burger in the big scheme of things. You have these mysterious people who drop her off and try to recover her. They could be mid-level. They could be a small level operation that just had a big thing, and she's the linchpin of their plans and the total investment of their organization. They could be a super powerful thing, and she's really just a minor thing that they want back because she's theirs. All of that's open to the game master to work with, which is what makes it better than that first story in the the DM area. So I guess just in the spirit of being nice to old generic Jenny D here, I'm going to go ahead and agree with her and say it's a 4. I'll take my 5 away and say that it should be a 4 for DM appeal. Just because, like I said, the way it's written is not written for a DM to pick up.
Backstory, and in Speed McCoy's backstory, there are things that the DM can play with, but if the DM doesn't want to play with them, the story is not like difficult to resolve, right? Like, you don't actually need to introduce any deeper plots or like weirder things going on with the Astral Conclave. They could just want to recover her to continue their experimentation. And I think there is a benefit to something that the DM could take it and run with it, or they could ignore it if they don't have anything big to do with it, and that wouldn't harm the story. This feels like something where the DM does need to figure out what's going on and work that in somehow in order for this storyline to get resolved. Kirsten's total score is like a 4.3 stars out of 5 situation. Like a very, very strong backstory. If I were going to use this backstory, I think it would need to be a conversation with my DM to see if they wanted me to provide more information or if they were okay with it being this open. And some DMs would be totally okay with it being this open, and others would be like, you're gonna have to give me a little more than that.
If your DM is saying you need a little bit more than that, to me, that's just bad DMing, because what you've got there is a DM who's basically saying, let me write you a story. Let me write you a story. And that is dangerously close to toxic player agency.
All right, let's rate my experience. Exceptional, eloquence, professionalism, quick responsiveness, proactive communication, language fluency, politeness. Value, exceptional. Not only did Kirsten come up with a fun and creative backstory from nothing, I appreciate that she brought her own unique ideas to my concept in a way that made them feel more unique. Tip the last guy $25, so I will tip her $25. All right, and then we have one more. Hello there, your project is done and everything's attached. I hope it's what you were picturing. For the backstory, I went with a fun, lighthearted angle. I wanted the world to feel warm and a little playful, the kind of place players actually want to spend time in. I look forward to your kind review. Do you? Do you, Wincy? Why is this document titled Silvara Night Whisper? This
Oh my God. They changed her name. Look at the rage on Miss Jenny's face there. Look at her. Like, that's not even performative rage. That is like reface that she's got there. And I don't know. I mean, I might need to clip that so that I can use it for other things. I mean, look at that. She's got a vein standing out on her neck there. You can see the tendon pulling on her jaw because this guy changed the name of her character, which, I mean, seriously, dude, you're getting paid to do this and you can't even bother to make sure the fucking name is right. All right, let's see how this goes. And of course, like, look right there, Waterdeep. Gee, because there's not 1,000 other cities you could have picked.
This is not her name, dude. I literally gave you her name. What are you doing? Here's the information that I gave him.
A complete backstory. And it is too damn long. There's no doubt about that. Look at this. This is way too much backstory, but look at incomplete backstory.
Her name, Vega Lyre, that she's rogue wizard, that she's Asimar, and that she's from Faerun. Out of those 4 things I gave him, he already skipped one of them. He just renamed my character for me, Sylvara Night Whisper. All right, she was born in a specific year in the heart of Waterdeep. Her arrival was celebrated throughout House Night Whisper, not because she was a son, which many noble families might have preferred, but because her mother, Celestria Starweaver, had been told she could never bear children. She has a different last name than her mom. I guess that's slightly more progressive than, it's too bad she wasn't a son. Her childhood was wrapped in comfort.
Seriously, Jenny, boo-hoo cry about it. Once again, quit trying to project your modern nonsense onto the world. In a world like Faerun, yeah, they're going to want, noble houses are going to want the son because they need to pass the line down because that's how the lineage works.
Warmth. The Night Whisper Manor stood in the Harbor Ward, a 3-story stone building with intricate carvings along its facade and windows of enchanted glass that never frosted in winter. Just like listing off cities in Faerun to prove that it's part of the setting. There was a big library. Her father, a man of military bearing and rigid principles, was the captain of the city watch. He taught her to ride, fence, and observe. Watch the eyes and you will always know the truth, he would tell her.
The eyes, Chico. They never lie.
Okay, so her...
All right, so Jenny D gets some cool points for putting in some Scarface. I would not, I'm actually kind of shocked she's ever seen that movie, and I'm even more shocked that she's not completely offended by it.
Her father's with the city guard, and her mother is a scholar/wizard who studied at the Blackstaff Academy. So her mom taught her magic from a wizard perspective. She was groomed for a life of nobility. She would marry well, produce heirs, and continue the Night Whisper name. Great. All right, chapter 2. She was 13 when her father first noticed the corruption.
Hold on a second. Chapter? What in the flying fuck is this guy writing? The only thing that this would, right now, the only thing that would happen if a player of mine came up with this is it would go straight to the damn shredder and they would immediately be relegated to the butt of every joke at the table.
Bribed at the city gates. Guards demanding payment for protection. Corruption in the city. A lot of story about her parents so far. There's a conspiracy, taking bribes. It's all originating from a shadowy organization called the Crimson Circle. He and his wife made a plan that they were going to report it to the Lord of Waterdeep. But when Sylvara, my character Sylvara, remember her? When she was 16, the conspirators decided that he had become too much of a threat and they murder him, presumably. Oh, they burned the manor. Her parents died in the fire. All right, and then chapter 3, Mira, or Myra. Interestingly, that's the name of this writer. Myra Wincy is the writer's name. So maybe this is their self-insert. Okay, so Myra's a rogue.
It's kind of funny. I mean, and a little ironic that she's getting irritated that the author used a self-insert. I mean, honestly, used grok, but, you know, used a self-insert when that's exactly what her entire playstyle is self-inserts.
She finds Sylvara, teaches her to join the Grey Hands, a loose collective of orphans, runaways, and displaced persons who survive by theft and burglary. Okay, it's like a thieves guild, but like for waifs. Chapter 4.
It's like a thieves guild, but actually somewhat more realistic than a fucking thieves guild.
4, she starts investigating the corruption that her father was investigating. I will say, I think this is too much. Like, it's long, but it's long in a way that I don't think is adding much to the story. Like, there is a lot of name dropping and mentions of like specific cities and specific named NPCs, but I don't actually think that it's all that helpful. Okay, so she's gonna finish her father's work and hunt down the Crimson Circle. So she like uncovers an affair and maybe that somebody ordered somebody killed, and like goes to this mage with information and is like, if I give you this information, you will train me. Even though she already had received like 16 years of training from a skilled mage. So I'm not really sure why that is necessary. You understand that this union of magic and larceny is something most wizards fear. Magic is knowledge. Theft is the acquisition of what you need through unconventional means. Why should magic and theft be opposed? Like, what do you...
Yeah, Jenny's right there. That's just functionally retarded. That is so stupid. Like that makes no sense. That theft and larceny. Once again, if only there were a mage in Faerun, like a really, really powerful mage in Faerun, like maybe one that is like literally like part of magic in the world of Faerun, who started as a thief and became a wizard. I mean, he could have a name like Ellie Miser or something like that. You know, I don't know. I mean, it's just such a far-fetched concept that this, you know, orphaned waif thief would be courted by Mistra and even incorporated into the weave as a virtual avatar of magic. But yeah, I mean, yeah, totally, definitely in Faerun, you know, larceny and magic would never be. This is borderline stupid. Yeah, this is idiotic and it makes no sense and it's entirely too long and it's got way too much BS in it. And yeah.
Mean that magic and larceny is something most wizards fear? Like, what exactly does that mean? Listen, I know that this writer is claiming they didn't use AI, but this feels like a signal to me because are you saying that wizards fear having their magic stolen? Because that would make sense, but I don't think that's what you're saying. Silvara is saying magic is knowledge and theft is getting what you need. Even that doesn't make sense. Like, if I were writing that sentence, I would say magic is knowledge and theft is acquiring what you need. So why not use theft to acquire knowledge is sort of how I would like bring that home. But this doesn't do that. Neither of you have given any reason that
and that would also be a shit sentence, by the way. That's not how you would fix that.
These things work or don't work. For 2 years, she lives a double life, working as a thief and then learning spellcasting. Chapter 6. God, this keeps going. Okay, this is the last one. The Shadow Scholar. By her 24th year, she had become something unprecedented. Not purely a thief, not purely a wizard, but a synthesis of both. She can do magic, she can do rogue stuff, she can do magic, she can do rogue stuff. She's impossible to catch. And she had made significant progress in her investigation of the Crimson Circle. That's great, guys. She's almost finished her story. Isn't that the perfect place to start a D&D game? So she's basically deciding that she needs to confront the Crimson Circle openly. She needs to come out of the shadows. You are choosing to become a warrior as well as a thief and a wizard. She's gonna take a level and fight her next, guys. And so at level 5, Silvara Night Whisper stands ready. She has 3 levels of roguish expertise. Why are you writing this into the narrative?
Well, and he's writing it into the narrative because he does need to actually guide you in some fucking way about the game. But, you know, she's actually kind of touched on something. It's the right. There's one really good thing about this backstory so far, and that is that we can go to one adventure that, you know, gets them enough experience to get halfway from level 5 to level 6. And then the party is totally done with anything that has to do with her backstory because they wiped out the Crimson Circle and her entire thing is resolved and we never have to talk about it again. And she just becomes somebody who hangs out with them because they helped her and maybe she's paying them back. That's literally the only benefit there, is that they made it very, very easy to do half of a one-shot to get this bullshit out of the way.
Why are you writing that she's level 5 in the fiction narrative? All right. Here's the thing. Let's just operate under what I think is the too generous assumption that this was not spit out by ChatGPT. Just imagine this is written by a human hand. I don't think it is, but let's imagine, because even if it is, I have my beef with it. So let's rate it. First, originality. I don't think that any of this is particularly original. She was born into nobility. Her family was killed when they like tried to do the right thing and crossed the wrong people. And then she had to learn to survive. I give it like a 2 stars for originality.
No, I give this a 1 star. Here's the thing. You almost want to be like, well, but Jenny, the other two were like orphan thief story. I mean, they're Oliver Twist with magic and some other little things in the background, and you give them much more originality. But I'm with her on this one. It's like, this is super, super stock, generic formula character. This is bottom of the barrel Del Rey stuff. These are books that people don't even remember being written, and the kind of thing that actually gave formula novels a very, very bad name, formula fantasy an extremely bad name. Like the kind of crap that was just cranked out in super cheap paperback in the late 70s and early 80s that led to people going into the George R.R. Martin direction in the 90s. It's just crap. And no, there's nothing original about it. It's straight rip off. Nothing. It doesn't even have any kind of serial number filing or shuffling the cards around a little bit. It's just straight stock. It's a 1.
Like, at least something is happening, I guess. It's not no backstory. It's not she woke up one day and decided to adventure. So like that to me would be 1 star. This at least has like an arc to it. I don't
Honestly, that to me would be better than the 1 star. Like, it would be better if she just woke up and decided to adventure. At least then you can go back in and be like, what caused her to have this sudden change in her life where she's like, I want to be an adventurer all of a sudden.
I don't think there's anything in this backstory that feels exciting to me. Like, when I hear that backstory, I don't think, ooh, that's exciting, I want to play that at the table. It functions. Like, it works as a backstory. To me, like, rich girl whose family was killed investigating corruption and now has to survive is bottom of the barrel. Like, it serves the purpose, but it doesn't feel exciting at all. As far as like uniqueness goes, her ASMR nature is completely ignored in this story. Literally the only thing even vaguely ASMR here is that her mother's name is Celestria Starweaver. That's literally it.
Yeah, she's right. He completely ignored the fact that she's an ASMR. It's not in there at all. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. You don't have to take my race does not have to be something that matters. It really doesn't. And let's be honest here. Don't be a hypocrite there, Jenny D. Don't be a hypocrite. He's being kind of race blind here. He's not making a big deal out of it. Well, I guess that's all right. She's not being a hypocrite because her ilk make race into absolutely everything, but they pretend that it's because of noble purposes. But it can be a little race bind. It's like, okay, cool. Your daddy was daddy was an angel. Cool. Whatever. It didn't have an effect on your life, so who cares?
The only connection to her being an SMR is her mother's name. And there's no explanation of her mother being like tied to anything celestial either. Playability. We need motivation, we need complication. The motivation of trying to take down the Crimson Circle because that's what her father was killed for trying to do, I think that's effective. You're going to take out the group that was responsible for the death of your family. That's just like a classic vengeance plotline. Complication, I think they're trying to imply a complication where like, in order to attack the Crimson Circle, she has to step out of the shadows and come into the light and attack them directly. But I actually think that's a little bit of a false setup because how you choose to engage with the Crimson Circle in the actual game is completely up to the player. I think this concept of like you have to step out of the shadows and into the light, it would work in a novel. There is no reason that the player couldn't be attacking the Crimson Circle in secret at the table. Like, there are so many ways to hunt down information and like do harm to an organization without doing so out in the open. I think in an actual D&D game, there'd be plenty of ways to try and attack them from the shadows. So I think that's a little bit of a false premise. I guess I'll give it a 3 stars out of 5 for playability because I do think taking down the Crimson Circle is like a completely viable motivation. It's on par with, I think, what like a lot of D&D characters' motivations would be.
All right, so let's talk about this playability real quick, because I think that there's playability of the backstory itself and playability of the character. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 in the playability of the character. Well, no, I'm take that. I'm going to knock a star off. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 for playability of the character. When I think about it, just purely as a character. Why? Because the only real thing from their backstory that has any effect left is they need to go take out the Crimson Circle. So as far as playability, knock out the Crimson Circle and then do whatever the hell you want to. She's totally open. And you have so much excessive detail pumped in here that you basically know exactly how she's going to behave in just about any situation. So there's no thought that's necessary anymore to play this character. There just isn't, because you know it all. So it's very playable in that regard. Now, playable as a backstory, I'd give it a 1. And I'd give it a 1. And I'm giving it a 1, assuming you can't go below 1. Like 1's the bottom, there's no 0. Or, half a star, I guess. I'd give it half a star if we're talking about the playability as a backstory, because the backstory's already played. There's nothing left to do except for, step out of the shadows and kill the Crimson Circle. That's all that's left. All the playing has been done in the quote unquote backstory. Now, ironically, especially if we assume the Crimson Circle is extremely low level in Waterdeep, this does kind of fit for a 5th level character, because when you're talking 5th edition, a 5th level character is already a world bender and a world shatterer. So it would make sense for them to have this much backstory, given how super heroic it is. But then again, Faroon is also loaded down to the gills. I mean, you got 17th and 18th level characters that are like, they don't even really move the needle that much. Like Dritsto Erden, for instance, I think is 18th level. He doesn't even really move the needle on the big scheme of things in Toril. There are many, 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 many more powerful character individuals just in the general vicinity of where he hangs out on the Sword Coast. So, like I said, depending on how you want to look at it, it's either 4 or half. I don't think she's right. I don't think that even averages out to a 3. I think it averages out to like a 2 or a 2.5. In one way, she's given way too much credit. In another, she's not given quite enough, is the way I see it with playability. But that's one of those things where it really wasn't outlined in, are we talking playability of the backstory itself or playability of the character that is in the backstory?
I do think that it's lacking the complication that I like to have in backstory. And then finally we have DM appeal, and I actually think this is where this backstory is the weakest. First, it's overly rigid. It's way too overly defined. There are like 15 named NPCs in this, even people who only show up like one time in a brief implied scene. They've defined the year in which she was born. They've defined a ton of different cities and places that the characters interact. They've defined several different organizations. All of these threads are tied up. I think actually worst of all is the fact that so much of this character's backstory is the adventure. In this backstory is learning to be a rogue, learning to be a wizard from 2 different mage teachers. I know she's level 5, but level 5 is not that high. She's already a member of the Greyhounds with years of experience as a thief. She's already trained under 2 different wizards, both her mother and this master mage Torin. She's already even been through character growth, learning about power and how power corrupts and stuff. This feels like 6 chapters that are a summary of her story, and they're setting up for the climax of her story instead of what a backstory should be, which is setting up the first chapter or the prologue of a story that then sets up for the whole book. But this feels like it's giving us a summary of basically a book worth of content and then dropping us in 3 chapters from the end. If I were a DM, I would not like this, right? Because this backstory is basically saying, hey DM, make the Crimson Circle so I can kill them. That's pretty.
All right, I'm going to let her finish up and get her ranking here in a second. But I think she's absolutely right, except about one thing. First off, level 5 fits for this in 5th edition. It just does. She is clearly polluted in that regard, that the only frame of reference she has is hyper powerful 5th edition characters with shitloads of power creep and all the Tasha's cauldron of breaking everything and nonsense that's been put out for 5th edition. She's not looking at this from the perspective of the rest of role playing or the rest of D&D even. because she would be right even in 3.5. 5th edition, you're really kind of stretching in 3.5 for this to have happened. In 5th edition, though, 5th level character is this kind of power, is this kind of thing. Now, you got a lot of time in there and stuff. Yeah, it's that part's a shake. The rest of it, she's pretty much right about. And there's way too much here. It's way too detailed. It defines way too much. As a DM, it goes straight in the damn shredder, because it's like, congratulations, you have railroaded your GM if they're going to use any of this. And the only redeeming factor is it's already at the end. So it's like, okay, here you go. Here's your Crimson Circle people. Go kill them. And that's what puts the party together. Use this as an adventure to bring the party together. Her story's done. And now the rest of her story is helping the rest of the party. That's the only real redeeming factor, is that so much of it's done.
Pretty much it. Like, there isn't really any mystery here. Like, we know what the Crimson Circle is doing and why. They were corrupt. They were profiting off of corruption. And we know why her parents were killed, which is that they were going to expose the Crimson Circle. So yeah, I'm going to give that 1 out of 5 for DM appeal, because as a DM, I would be irritated to receive a backstory like this. I would be,
you know, Jenny, I agree with you 100%. Like I said, straight to the damn shredder. I would be incredibly irritated by this. I think 1 star is too much. This is like 0.1 star. This is as close to 0 stars if you can get, if you don't let me say 0 stars. If 1 is the minimum, she's dead on. This would be frustrating to see. And this would be the kind of, what's even worse is and this would not be in Jenny's case because of the type of player she is, the type of game master she is, and the type of people, the type of circles she runs in. But for me, this would not just be a go into the shredder irritating backstory to receive. This would be a situation where I've got to sit down with this player and have a frank discussion with whether or not they actually need to be at my table. Because if this is the kind of thing that they're punching in and coming up with, this is 14 red flags running up the poles. Like, this is so many red flags that there is a theme park behind it with Batman rides and stuff. That's what this is to me, because I'm looking at this and I'm like, this player is going to be a damn issue. And I'm going to have to sit down and nip this in the bud so they don't poison my group.
like, rein it in, friend. You've written an entire story here. What are we going to do at the table? And I don't like having so much defined about like the character's setting. And if I could just note a few things that I would just generally take points off for, let's start with the big one. Not using my character's name. Don't love that. I know I'm viewing this through a negative lens because I had such a bad experience with this writer right up front, with them basically admitting they were using ChatGPT and then backing off as soon as they realized that they were going to lose my $60 payment. So I know that I'm like being harsher than I would if I believed this was written by a human person, but I just don't believe it was. I think this is weak and cliche because that's what large language models do. They take like the most common, most redundant, least unique part of everything that's ever been written by people, and then they regurgitate it in some new format. Like, being unique actually goes against what large language models do. They are explicitly not doing that. So no wonder this isn't original. ChatGPT is doing its job. It's Wincy M who is not doing their job. I am going to escalate it to Fiverr because A, I really don't want to give a scammer $60. Like, that's up. Especially when I couldn't give $60 to the real writers. That pisses me off. And B, I would like their account to like be penalized for the fact that they are scamming people. If they're going to use ChatGPT, they have to at least disclose that in the description so that people like me who don't want to pay for ChatGPT output can avoid ordering from them. Right now, by saying written from scratch in the description, they are actively misleading people. They're lying to customers. And
she is in no way wrong about that. I'm 100% with her. I don't have the issues with people using AI. I do have a serious issue with people using AI and lying and saying they're not.
I think that that's something that you should get in trouble for. Call me lawful good, but I think you shouldn't be allowed to lie to people who are paying you to do work. So, can Fiverr write a better backstory than me? I would argue yes. I think Speed McCoy wrote a better backstory than me, and he did it for the low, low price of $5. You can't even get a Crunchwrap Supreme for that anymore. And that wasn't just a backstory, it was also 3 NPCs, roleplay tips, and a homebrew spell. Speed McCoy, if you're watching this, please raise your prices immediately.
Yeah, I mean, Honestly, I think both of the first two did better than she did for the most part. Hers was not terrible by any stretch of the imagination. It was a lot better than I thought it would be. And like I said, when she read her backstory, I actually looked at that as I wonder if she's editing herself to try and fit the video format. But I'm going to go ahead and here you go, guys. This is the fun one here. This is what I did with her person. I said that Vega Lyre may have been born under a star, but it was not a lucky star. By the time she was old enough to remember anything, her brothers and father were conscripted by their lord and died in a meaningless border war. As the youngest of 7 sisters, she watched her sisters married off to a series of old merchants based solely on the price that they could bring to her mother. Vega chose a different path. Fleeing home at the age of 13, she lived on the streets and she survived intact. She stole, she spied, she served as a lookout, she served as a runner for various different ne'er-do-wells, but she did not, do the deed. If one thing, she was still virginal and pure, but other than that, her father was gone, her brothers were gone, her sisters were married off in succession to dirty old merchants, and her mother did what it took to survive. One day, she found her lucky star, though. She stole a mage's spellbook for one of her clients. The mage found her client first, and neither one of them survived. Vega took residence in the mage's tower, self-learning magecraft and living off the wealth of the tower until the mage's order found out, and she died in a fire when a magical accident occurred at the tower. And now it's back to the streets with only her freedom and her virginity left. So I think I wrote, like I said, I scribbled this down in like 5 minutes. Ironically, I am going to say this. I did forget to put in the ASMR part, but then again, who cares? The ASMR part doesn't really matter. Maybe it was her dad was the ASMR. And she just doesn't find that out till later, or who knows, maybe she's got maybe that's part of her backstory in and of itself, is that she's kind of like, kind of a reverse Virgin Mary type situation where her mother was visited by a celestial and given this last child as she is the youngest. But, she loses her father and her brothers in a meaningless border war, which means there is room there for it. And she runs off, and by sheer luck, she ends up stealing her way into a mage's tower where she trains herself in her 2 levels of wizard on her own. And then she sets the place on fire to slip out the back door to start her whole life anew. Leaves you nice little threads there. So what do you think of my backstory? Just let me know in the comments section below.
You deserve to make at least a Crunchwrap Supreme worth of profit for all that. I also want to give flowers to Kirsten W. because I gave her nothing and she came back with several pages of narrative fiction and an absolutely sick aesthetic detail that I am immediately grafting onto Vega in any form. Silver Mercury Tears? Are you kidding me? That alone makes me want to do a cosplay photo shoot. I had a few notes on hers, but those are also notes I could have given her in the revision stage if this were a real order for a real character, and I have no doubt she would have risen to the occasion. I would say her backstory was on par quality-wise with the one that I wrote. I'll admit, I'd
say her backstory was actually better than Ginny D's. But, on par as far, it's not that much better, and I think it works out there. Now, actually, I'm going to do this too. The little scribble notes I put in, I'll go ahead and put my backstory in the description of this video in case anybody actually gives a shit. But, yeah, I think 1 and 2 both beat Ginny D out pretty handily here.
Into this video, I thought this whole thing was kind of silly. Backstories aren't that hard to come up with, and even if you don't want to write one, there are tons of resources for generating them. But I did find myself getting inspired by some of the concepts these writers came up with, and I think that's because no matter how creative you are, it's easy to fall into a rut with your own ideas. Sometimes you just need another brain to spark something new. In a way, this feels a little bit like creative brainstorming with a stranger. And sure, you could do the same thing by sitting down with a friend and bouncing around character ideas together. But if you don't have someone available for that, tossing a few bucks to another person in the tabletop community who's passionate about the game does not sound like a bad scenario to me. You know what does sound like a bad scenario though? Paying a scammer 12 times as much money to copy paste from ChatGPT and change my character name. Some of you might be saying, Ginny, you obviously hate AI, but what if I don't? What if I'm fine with it? Was the backstory really that bad? And in my opinion, yeah. For $60, I expect something pretty mind-blowing. Even if this was written by a human, I would have tons of complaints. The writer didn't ask almost any questions, which was a red flag from the start, and then they delivered a final product that not only changed or ignored fundamental parts of my character, it also just wasn't good for D&D. It felt more like the setup for a fantasy novel than for a tabletop game. And this isn't surprising looking at the writer's profile. While the other two writers specifically talk about D&D in their profiles and their product listings, this one is primarily advertising ghostwriting, and D&D is just a single keyword thrown into a bullet list in the product description. So if you are looking for a service like this, I think the biggest takeaway is just to really pay attention to the seller's profile. If you're
And that is true. I mean, she missed a lot in the seller's profile. If you remember way back in what will now be video 1, when she was first shopping for these people, it actually says to make sure that you label your use of, how you feel about AI on that person's or scammer's profile. Now, I'm not disagreeing with her. The person's scum and they would have lied anyway, but at least it's sitting there. And maybe look for reviews, read reviews, make sure they have more than 2 or 3 of them. In the I think it said they came on board in 2024. So in 2 years, they got 3 reviews. These are massive, massive red flags that were missed. And so you kind of have to say, it's like, Jenny, you deserve to lose your $60 because you went to a person who was not fit for this field, who was not specifically a D&D person, and who, had an AI warning in there and had numerous other red flags. And I think you actually, you know what? I'm not going to accuse her of this, but it really, really, really smells like she intentionally did that so that she could go on an AI spiel without going on an AI spiel, so that she doesn't have to run the risk of joining the AI fight. She can signal to the side that she needs to signal to while still maintaining her, oh, I'm not being a Luddite side. And basically doing exactly what she normally would do, which is stay generic, stay on the fence, and try to not upset people. However, if you go to her, and she doesn't have a Twitter anymore, she turned X into the whatever it is, the disabled mode. But if you go to her Blue Sky account, I'll bet you she's vitriolic about AI. But she's not going to do that on her videos. On her videos, she's going to try and play the center closer.
If you're going to pay somebody to do something like this, especially at that higher rate, they had better be an expert at it. I am trying so hard to not sound as angry as I am about this, but the truth is, this feels personal to me. When I first started making content online, I wasn't making enough money to live on yet, so I filled in the gaps with freelance copywriting work, and it was not glamorous. I wrote dozens of SEO-targeted blogs for dentist websites about cosmetic dental procedures. Truly thrilling stuff. But even though it was deeply boring, getting paid to write, even about dentistry, was still closer to my dream than working at a grocery store. And those kinds of entry-level creative jobs are exactly the ones AI is eliminating right now. So seeing someone use a site like Fiverr, which is the kind of resource I was using when I was finding my feet, just to copy-paste AI output and charge more than the human writers who are actually qualified to do this, that really bothers me.
Well, unfortunately, that is one of the things that it doesn't bother me at all. That is exactly the kind of writing that should be done by AI, because you know what it's going to do? It's going to make the dental work cheaper. It's going to make it easier and quicker to find those things. And that is not detailed creative work. You know what you do to get better as a creative writer? You write creatively. You write short stories, you write poetry, you write until you're good enough that AI can't do your job. And you don't bitch and whine when basically worker bee work gets taken away and used with better tools. Like this is This is exactly the kind of thing you shouldn't cry about AI for. And it supports my thesis that I've said about AI artists before. It's not good artists who whine and cry about AI. It's the ones who are barely good enough to crank out low-level junk and charge too much for it. Those are the ones who cry about it. Larry Elmore, he may say something about it, but I guarantee you Larry Elmore does not care about AI, and he sure as hell isn't worried that AI is going to somehow lessen his ability to sell paintings. Okay? It's just not going to bother him. Okay? But when it comes to the only thing I'm good enough to do is crank out a logo or two, you better find a way to be better than ChatGPT, because that's what's coming for your job, and it kind of should, because those are nothing but expense lines. I'm not buying a logo. When I go to, like, say, Harley Davidson, I want to buy a motorcycle. I don't want to buy a logo. Okay. And if the logo being cheaper can make the product more accessible, then that's a win for everybody, except for the line item expense of guy who's good enough to charge a little bit of money for art, but not good enough to actually be a professional artist.
No, I can't stop AI from existing just by hating it and talking shit in a YouTube video. It's already more than $1 trillion industry being forced on us from every angle, but one small power we do have is choosing who and what to support in our own communities. And in a hobby like D&D, where creativity and storytelling are the whole point, I think it's worth uplifting the people who are actually putting their human imagination into the things that they make. You absolutely don't need to buy backstories on Fiverr. Most people will never pay money for player character content, and that is totally fine and normal. This is not a necessity, it's a luxury. But if you're feeling stuck on a character concept, or you just want a few new ideas to play with, I found that it can be a fun way to spark your imagination, with the added bonus of supporting a fellow D&D nerd while you're doing it. And of course, if you want to get better at writing your own backstories, whether that's for your own...
Okay, so we don't need to go to her pitch of her own little video there. Like I said from the very beginning, this is a Ginny D video that definitely was where I was going to have a lot more that I agreed with her on. And ironically, it was mainly some of the ending AI stuff that I disagreed with. And there were places where I didn't think she went far enough, where I thought she was maybe a little bit closer to the old school than me. And very, very, very limited capacity there. But overall, yeah, you don't pay people to write your backstories, folks. That's part of the game. That's like paying somebody to play it for you. And in a way, it's almost like these assholes who get on Call of Duty and use an aimbot. I mean, it's not cheating in that way because it's not competitive, but it's like, what are you even doing? I guess I could see that and see this as being something that would be very useful if, say, you play in a more narrative role-playing style game, and you're really more of a power gamer type, more of a mechanical gamer, maybe more of a war gamer. So this is something for you. Or if you're somebody who really just lacks that kind of creativity to come up with something on your own. So what you want to do is have somebody, hey, please tell me a cool way to play this character, and then you can take it from there. I guess I can see that. Obviously the service exists for a reason, but yeah, definitely not a necessity, definitely a luxury. And you guys tell me what you think. Was I fair to generic Jenny this time? Did I miss some stuff? Should I have ripped her a little bit harder on a few things? Are you disappointed that I didn't dress her down and, strip every strand of fake color out of her hair with the scathing attacks on her stupidity? Did it disappoint you there? But just let me know what you think. And hell, I mean, if you feel so inclined, let me know what you think about my version of the backstory there. Give me your 1 stars and your 5 stars and your 4 stars in there, and let's see what comes of it. But anyway, there you go, guys. This is 2 hours of content reacting to good old Ginny D, and we are going to move on to some other stuff here in the coming days. Remember, members got this stuff 2 days ahead of time. And they got this second video probably 3 days. I haven't decided just how far ahead I'm going to put this second video, but several days ahead of time. The members got the whole thing. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about where to spend your 2 to 3 hard-earned dollars. I don't even remember exactly how expensive my memberships are, but they're like $2 and $5. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you coming out. Let me know what you think about what I had to say here, and I will see you guys next time.